at home for like most of their time when they're young.
You can't just say to a mother, oh, don't be stressed out. That affects your children.
안녕하세요. 베이비 사이언스 베싸TV의 베싸입니다. 오늘 저희 스튜디오에 특급 게스트가 오셨어요. 전 세계적으로 100만 부 이상 팔린 글로벌 베스트셀러인 30 million words. 한국에서는 부모의 말 아이의 뇌의 저자인 데이나 서스킨드 교수님입니다. 교수님은 소아외과 의사이시고 부모의 말이 아이의 뇌 발달에 미치는 영향에 대해서 오랫동안 연구를 하셨고요. 30 million words initiative라고 하는 부모들의 말을 교육시키는 단체까지 설립을 하신 분이에요. 아이의 언어 발달, 뇌 발달에 대한 아주 귀한 조언을 들으실 수 있는 좋은 기회가 되실 거예요. 오늘 말 그대로 부모의 말, 아이의 뇌에 대해서 이야기를 나눠보려고 합니다. Hi, Dr. Suskind. I'm thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
I already strongly recommended your book to my subscribers, so most of them should know you, I think. But for those who don't, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. My name is Dr. Dana Suskind, and I'm actually a pediatric surgeon at the University of Chicago in the United States, and it's my pleasure to be here. My work really is focused on the importance of the first 5 years of life, the power of parents and caregivers to build their children's brains, and we work with families all across the U.S. to help, give every child a chance to reach their full potential.
In your book, you argued that nurturing a language-rich environment is very important for a child's language development and learning ability. For those of you who haven't had the chance to read your book, or for those who already forgotten about it, can you provide a brief explanation of what constitutes a language-rich environment?
Absolutely. So a language-rich environment is an environment that a child is exposed to much back and forth conversation with their parents, and their caregivers, starting on day one. And at the center that I co-direct at the University of Chicago, we've really boiled down what this lively, rich environment can look like with something that we call the 3 T's. With the 3 T's are a toolkit that parents can use every day with their children as they're talking and interacting. And the 3 T's are tune in, talk more, and take turns. Tuning in is really looking and seeing what your child is interested in, focusing on what they're excited about, then talking about it, using rich language, talking about the past, the future, the present, with beautiful vocabulary. And then lastly, and most importantly, is taking turns. You see, a language-rich environment is not just about putting more and more words to their children, to your child, but really about engaging them in conversation from day one. And even though I've heard from many parents, well, how do you have a conversation with a baby from day one? Really seeing the cues that babies give you. So if you say something to the baby and they point, that's a part of a conversation. So those 3 T's, tune in, talk more, take turns, are the best way to give a language-rich environment to your baby and build your baby's brain.
Thank you. So I'm a parent myself. I have a 4-year-old daughter. And as a parent myself, I hear a lot of advices telling that, sensory experience is really important in child's brain development. So you have to let them touch a lot, hear a lot, and see a lot of different stimulus. However, in your book, you emphasize that the primary catalyst or factor for brain development is none other than parental speech. Yeah. So this, it seems a little bit different perspective than the one that emphasizes sensory experience in the brain development. This does not have to compete each other, but if you have to prioritize one thing, what do you think it should be? For example, if an infant or toddler primarily stays at home interacting with their parents rather than going outside and touch stuffs and to have the sensory experience, will their brain still develop in optimal way? Was that clear?
I love absolutely, and I love that question, and I love the fact that you're a mother of a 4-year-old. First of all, bless you, because being a parent in the early years, I know is very difficult. So I want to emphasize there is something called good enough parenting. You are doing a great job, I promise. Secondly, I love that question. But I think to your point, they're not mutually exclusive. It's not one versus the other. They can often be done, in conjunction with each other. Yes, language and interaction are the key catalysts for making those neural connections, but exploration and sensory can be part of it. So back at the university in the center where we help teach parents about the 3 T's, tune in, talk more, take turns. Really, the beauty of that is that it can be done in everyday experiences. So let's say a baby is staying at home with their mother, exploring the environment, those sensory stimulation can be done not only within the home, but outside. And the mother or the parent or caregiver can overlay those 3 T's as they're doing it. So let's say you're out in the park and you see, a beautiful flower, and the baby points at it and explores it. Overlaying language, tuning in to the fact that the baby is interested in those flowers, then using rich language to talk about it, and then seeing what the baby, trying to engage them in conversation. That's an example of marrying the two, sensory experience with the language-rich environment. And it's really important to emphasize that language-rich environments can be done anywhere, whether, you're folding the laundry, cooking, exploring, taking the bus. It's really just a mindset of how you interact with your baby. It's not just about pushing out language or ignoring them. It's about engaging them. So,
but I think many parents feel like they have to go somewhere, like in the nature, the forest, or where the sand is, when they hear about this sensory exploration. But do you think it's and particularly because of the COVID situation, many people had to stay at home, and they're worried about not giving enough opportunity for those sensory experience. But do you think it's okay for them to stay at home for like most of their time when they're young? So
you're really getting to look, sensory experiences in the first 3 years of life. Yes, it's wonderful to see the beach and see nature, but it's really, you can have sensory experiences within your home, in the backyard, wherever. So I'm not worried about that. But your point about, the impact of COVID on children's development and, parents feeling like worried that, their children can be negatively affected is a very real concern. But what is important to know is that, that interaction can happen anywhere. And that some of the COVID delays that we're seeing, in this country and around the world really are less about, being out in the sand than the stress that parents are feeling. Because it's quite clear that, the well-being of children depends on the support for their parents. And during COVID-19, parents were left on their own, having to do it all, and it just wasn't sustainable. So I think that understanding that COVID and the impact on children's development had less to do with not being able to go outside than, the stress that we all were under. So
that affects 3T. That it's hard to tune in and hard to talk more because you're stressed out. And I think what's important, and I would be remiss to not say this, is that children's positive development relates to the 3 T's, the language-rich environment, but also the protection from toxic stress, right? The stress that there's normal stress. That's all okay. But prolonged experiences with really toxic stress isn't good for children's development. And in that same way, the stress and the mental health of parents, they need support, because often that stress is transmitted to children. And you can't just say to a mother, oh, don't be stressed out. That affects your children. That's not fair. That's crazy. What we need to do is, as a society, understand that unless we better support parents, and especially mothers, but all parents,
it affects not only the parents, but the children and the future of society. And so what I hope most from this book and my other work is that this is not the science that tells parents, oh, you need to do more. It's all on you. I want to tell all the parents who are listening that it's just the opposite. That there's a saying that children represent 25% of the population and 100% of the future, right? And we know in this country and in our country too, that many people are deciding not to have children. So unless society steps up and better supports parents, their mental health, the financial, the whole social norms, it's not sustainable. Sorry, I went off.
No, thank you. That's beautiful. Many parents worry their toddlers don't start talking while their peers do. When they're like 2 years oldish, then she should be able to make a sentence, and then she can't, and they're worried. And they often ask me if late talker face kind of a disadvantage in their future development or academic achievement. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, look, as a mother myself, my first baby, my first daughter came out, I swear, talking in full sentences. Then my son came out, and she did all the talking for him, and I was like, oh my gosh, is my son going to ever talk? He ended up talking. It's fine. But you get to this question of late talking. Why is that? And I think I want to start off with, look, you want to make sure that it is, not biologically based, right? Seeing a speech therapist or a doctor to make sure that there's nothing, that needs to be tended to from a medical standpoint. But once that is cleared, right, then children talk at many different levels and different time points. And the key and the things that you can do as a parent and caregiver is really provide those 3 T's, talking and, tuning in and taking turns. So as long as there's not other medical issues behind it, being a late talker. My son is doing just fine. He's in college. He wants to be a doctor. And my daughter still talks a lot, but they're all very well. So, do
you think there is a temperament involved in this early talkers and late talkers difference?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a temperament different, and everybody has different sort of genetic framework, right? I often think that people read my book, 30 million words or Parent Nation as it means that everybody is the same. No, we all come out into this world with our own special genetic blueprint. What this science is clear is the more interaction and talk and interaction, the more likely you're going to reach your promise, your frontier of what your genes were supposed to allow you to be. So,
thank you. The next question is about bilingualism. You mentioned bilingualism in a positive light in your book. And in Korea, many parents expose their children to English through nursery rhymes and songs and picture books because they have a limited English-speaking abilities. And some worry about this, that English exposures at such a young age will hinder their mother tongue language development, while others think it is a good idea to expose English to them when they're young. What are your thoughts on this kind of second language exposure and its impact on children's development?
Yeah. The beauty of children's brains in the first years of life is that there is unlimited neuroplasticity, which means, unlimited ability to learn new things and develop. And so children who are exposed to 2 languages, 3 languages, have that ability to just naturally absorb those languages and learn them. So it's a really powerful thing to be able to expose your children to multiple languages. I want to caveat that, though, with, the fact that the science is pretty clear. The children learn best when their caregivers use their native language, right? If I learned a little bit of Korean now and had a new baby, that would not be as helpful for my baby learning Korean. It's really when you use your native language, my colleague Erica Hoff showed that you don't just provide words, but so much other meaning through my intonation and emotions. So, you know, I think it's fine for parents in Korea to expose their children to English nursery rhymes and reading, etc. But really, you know, the more if they have, you know, not on YouTube, but, you know, there's so much interactive stuff these days in English that's probably the better way is somebody who has a native tongue. But it's totally fine, and I'm not worried about it.
Okay. So. And one of the things that interested me in your book was about dialogic reading. And it was emphasized as important during shared book reading experiences. However, I've noticed that many parents struggle with dialogic reading, and they try, but they end up reading just a text to their children in a literal way. And does this more literal reading still provide advantages in language development? And if a parent wants to improve at dialogic reading, what can they do to, you know, can they practice, or what can they do to?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, you know, first off, yes. I mean, reading, you know, straight, as you say, literal, is still very positive. I mean, I remember holding my kids and them just wanting to hear the stories from me. It's a wonderful thing. I think my discussion related to, as you say, dialogic book reading, or really book sharing, is how you use a book and leverage those 3 T's, tuning in, talking more, taking turns, as a way to get a lot of interaction. And, you know, how do you practice it? I don't want parents to sort of practice it like, oh, this is homework, I've got to do this right. But find the joy in it. You know, get your child excited. What are the pictures? Even if, you know, your baby wants to go to the last page and then go backwards, or, you know, skip pages. It's more just to have the interaction in those 3 T's and having fun. But if they just want to listen to the book, that's fine too. It's really, you know, that's where the sensory, you know, holding them close, having them touch the pages, which is powerful.
So it's about the whole experience rather than just language in it. And in a similar vein, to enhance, many parents actually ask me about how to enhance the quality of their own, you know, speech to their children. They are like, oh, should I just explain everything around them, or what exactly can I do to, you know, do a quality speech to their children? They want to know more like practical, you know, lessons to apply to their daily lives. What can they do?
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes back again to those 3 T's, tuning in, talking more, taking turns. And obviously, as the baby gets older, you start using more complex language, you know, just naturally. I don't want parents to feel stilted, like, okay, I need to use a more complex word for, you know, coffee cup, you know, this time. I think naturally parents will do that. You know, when you use language, you know, especially as the kids get older, there's something called decontextualized language. So often when we talk about things, we talk about the here and now. You know, I have a cup, I'm going to drink from it. But when you talk about the past, when you say, oh, do you remember yesterday when we, you know, went to the library and saw the books, or talking about the future, or things that are far away and not right here and now, those are practical, powerful ways to, you know, make language more complex and brain building. But ultimately, find the joy. There is no one right way. I mean, we can follow the science, but I don't want the science to take the joy of parenting away.
So if you are like rather introverted person and you're like, you don't like talking, you know, a lot, then those parents find it, you know, find their own personality as a bit of disadvantages compared to those who are really talkative, you know, in natural way. They talk a lot naturally in front of their children. And I've seen some of them like worrying about not giving, you know, good language environment to their children. Is there any way for them to, do they just, oh, like I need to I don't know, like talk about like past experience from today, or like what kind of advice can I give to them?
Yeah. You know, again, I really want to go back to this idea of good enough parenting. You know, parents have many different personalities. You know, as long as, you know, they're, you know, providing the nurturing, rich environment, we don't know the threshold. I mean, I know many sort of more quiet, you know, parents who are brilliant, and their children are brilliant, right? It's, you know, you don't want to put your children in a room and never talk to them. That's a problem. But there are many ways to share interactions with your children. I know some who, you know, the mother has a love of reading books. She's more quiet, but she passed that love to her child, who is getting a lot of language and interaction through their love of books. So there are many different ways. But yes, explain, have fun, but don't feel stressed about if you're more quiet.
Yeah.